Hi, boys and girls. I'm going to read a book for you this morning called Too Much Trick or Treat, and it's written by Jana Miller. I think this book is about as old as Miss Green. Let's take a look together. What do you think? This book was published in 1991, but originally written in 1969. Now, I was born in 1966. I'm going to ask for you to use your math skills for those of you who are able to do 4-digit subtraction. How much older am I than this book? I'll tell you the answer at the end, if I don't forget. All right, let's see what happens here in Too Much Trick or Treat. This is going to be the best Halloween ever, exclaimed Jammer the rabbit as he put on the meanest, scariest mask he had ever seen. Gotcha, he said to himself in the mirror, and then he snickered the way he always did when he was up to no good, which was most of the time. With a gunny sack slung over his shoulder, Jammer hurried outside and hopped along the path into the woods. He didn't stop to trick or treat at any of the houses. This Halloween, he had concocted a scheme for getting more than his usual share of treats. Before this night is over, Jammer chuckled, my sack will be filled with apples and carrots and popcorn balls and all the chocolate I can eat. Just the thought of chocolate made Jammer's nose twitch and his ears flop back and forth. Of all the treats in the world, Jammer liked chocolate best. He didn't care what kind of chocolate he got, sweet, bittersweet, dark brown, or light brown. But chocolate with almonds was his favorite of favorites. Before long, Jammer came to the old oak tree at the bend in the path. He couldn't help but snicker as he hid behind the tree to wait, and he didn't have to wait very long. Soon, he heard someone walking up the path. Jammer peeked out from behind the tree and saw a trick-or-treater dressed in a hobo costume. He knew it was Measle the Weasel. Measle's head always wobbled from side to side as he walked. When Measle came near the tree, Jammer jumped out and yelled in his most ferocious voice, "Gotcha!" Measle screamed with fright. He dropped his bag of treats and ran down the path as fast as his legs could carry him. Jammer roared with laughter. He picked up the bag and poured all of Measle's treats into his own sack. I don't like that. How he enjoyed hearing the chocolate bars drop among the apples and carrots, and he could smell the wonderful creamy kind with almonds. He was just about to take out a bar to munch when he heard others coming up the path. It had to be Daisy and Clara Raccoon. He would have recognized their giggles anywhere. When Daisy and Clara came near, Jammer leaped out and yelled, "Gotcha!" That sent the two girls screaming down the path. "What luck!" Jammer exclaimed as he picked up the bags the raccoons had left behind. Their bags were even fuller than Measle's had been, and Jammer whistled a merry tune as he put the treats in his own sack. When he heard someone else approaching, Jammer quickly returned to his hiding place. He soon realized it was Bucky the Beaver. Bucky's teeth always made a funny clicking sound. When Bucky was near enough, Jammer sprang into action. "Gotcha!" he shouted. Bucky's mouth opened wide with fright, and he yelled, "Yipes!" He dropped his bag of treats and ran down the path with his teeth click-clacking all the way. Jammer whooped and hollered at the fun of it all. He poured Bucky's treats into his own sack, which was now bulging with goodies. Then, not being able to wait another minute, Jammer grabbed a handful of chocolate bars and tore open their wrappers. He sat down and leaned against the tree. "They'll never know how I tricked them," he chuckled as he gobbled up the chocolate. But someone did know. Flatnose the earthworm, dressed in a pencil costume, was sitting only a few feet away. He had seen the whole thing. The next morning, when Flatnose told Measle and the others what had happened, they were really angry. They vowed to get even with Jammer the very next Halloween, and they huddled together and made up a plan for doing just that. "Oh, this is really going to be fun," Flatnose exclaimed. Halloween 2. The next Halloween, Jammer was filled with excitement. His new mask looked even more terrifying than the one he had the year before, and he couldn't wait to scare the others and get another big supply of chocolate. Flatnose the earthworm had a new costume, too. This year, he knew he would need to move faster, so he wore a train outfit that had 2 box cars, a green caboose, and a 3-speed engine. When Jammer came out of his house that night, Flatnose nudged the engine's lever into second gear, then he quietly followed the rabbit down the path and into the woods. Jammer didn't plan to hide behind the oak tree again. This time he would surprise everyone by the big willow tree at the far side of the woods. As soon as Jammer reached the willow tree and stepped behind it, Flatnose turned around. Putting the engine into high gear, he sped lickety-split to where Measle and the others were waiting. Jammer is hiding at the big willow tree, the earthworm told them. Good work, Flatnose, Bucky said, clicking his teeth. Let's go, said Measle. And the raccoon girls, of course, giggled with delight as they ran across the bridge with the others. Jammer was becoming impatient. He had waited by the willow tree for a long time, and he was beginning to wonder why no trick-or-treaters had come that way. Then he heard the giggles of Daisy and Clara. When he peeked through the branches, he saw Measle and Bucky were with them, and following at their heels was Flatnose in his train costume. Great, thought Jammer. I'll get all of their treats at one time. Then he straightened his mask and prepared to scare them out of their wits. I've never seen so many chocolate bars, he heard Daisy giggle. With almonds, exclaimed Bucky, clicking his teeth. And she's got lots more chocolate too, Measle said. Chocolate? With almonds? And someone has lots more? Jammer became so excited he removed his mask and stepped from behind the tree. Hi, kids, he said, pretending to be friendly. Oh, hi, Jammer, said Measle, holding up a fistful of bars. Have you ever seen so much chocolate? And there's more, too, Clara said. There are mountains of chocolate, giggled Daisy. With almonds, clicked Bucky. Where? Jammer had to know. At the old Wilson house, Clara replied. But no one lives at the Wilson house anymore, Jammer said. A woman moved in last week, Daisy told him. And she's really nice, said Measle. She decorated the whole house just for Halloween. The house looks awfully spooky, said Clara. And upstairs she has pounds and pounds of chocolate. With almonds, clicked Bucky. She told us to take all we wanted, added Measle. Wow, Jammer exclaimed. I'm going to need a bigger sack. And without even saying goodbye, he jumped over the fence and scurried home to get one. The dust hadn't settled from his tracks before Measle and the others turned around and ran back down the path as fast as they could. Flatnose's engine sped along in top gear. Wasting no time at home, Jammer grabbed the biggest sack he could find. Then he headed toward the old Wilson house, whistling every step of the way until he reached the rusted gate in front of the house. As the clouds drifted apart and let the light of the moon shine on the house, Jammer stopped in his tracks. Clara had been right. The house did look spooky. It was old and gray and ready to fall to the ground. Jammer couldn't help but wonder why a nice old woman would want to live in such an awful place. When the clouds covered the moon again, the night seemed even darker than before. A shiver ran up and down Jammer's spine. He wasn't sure he wanted to go into that house alone. He wished Measle and the others were with him. But then Jammer thought of the chocolate. Mountains of it, Daisy had said. With almonds, Bucky had clicked. Take all you want, Measle had added. It was too much for a chocoholic like Jammer to resist, so he took a deep breath and started toward the house. When he reached the front porch, he stepped up. Then, with all the courage he could find, he raised his hand and knocked on the door. There was no answer. So he knocked again. When the door slowly opened before him, its rusted hinges moaned and groaned. Jammer peered into the darkness and saw an old woman standing by the staircase. She was wearing a long white dress, and her white hair, piled high on her head, looked like matted spider webs twisted into a knot. Her face was all withered and wrinkled like a dried prune. Trick or treat, Jammer finally said, trying not to sound frightened. Oh, treat, of course, the woman replied in a scratchy voice. Did you come to get some of my chocolate? Yes, ma'am, Jammer said in a nervous voice. with nervous politeness. Come right in, the woman told him. The chocolate is in the room at the top of the stairs. Go right up. And may I take all the chocolate I want? He asked. With almonds, the woman said with a smile. As Jammer climbed the stairs, the steps creaked beneath his feet. When he got to the top, he walked to the doorway and looked into the room. By flickering candlelight, he could see that Measle and the others had told the truth. There were mountains of chocolate bars heaped and stacked on the tabletop. What a terrific sight, Jammer exclaimed. Forgetting his fear, he ran to the table and started grabbing up chocolate bars and dropping them into his sack. Take all you want, he heard the old woman say. When he turned around, he saw she was standing in the doorway. He hadn't realized the woman had followed him up the stairs. Maybe I should leave some for the other trick-or-treaters, Jammer said, starting to feel uneasy. Nonsense, the woman replied. There won't be any more trick-or-treaters coming by this late at night. Jammer had forgotten all about the time. He suddenly realized how late it was, and he began to wonder how he could get past the old woman and out the door. I think I have plenty of chocolate, he said. You never have plenty until you have too much, the woman told him. And you do like chocolate, don't you? She asked, clicking her teeth. Yes, ma'am, Jammer replied. I like chocolate too, the woman said with a crooked smile spreading across her wrinkled face. But there is one thing I like even more than chocolate. Do you know what that is? What? Asked Jammer, not sure he really wanted to hear the answer. The old woman reached out her hands and yelled, Rabbit stew! Jammer dropped his sack of treats and scurried under the table before the woman could grab him. Suddenly, all the shutters on the windows started banging open and shut. The closet door fell from its hinges. A skeleton stepped out of the shadows. A ghost swung down from the ceiling, and the screeching sound of a train whistle pierced the air. Jammer screamed with fright and jumped to his feet. He ran to the window and leaped out. Then he tumbled head over heels across the porch roof and dropped to the ground. As he raced to the gate, he heard laughter coming from the house, but he didn't turn around to see who was laughing. He pushed open the gate and ran for home. For some time, the old woman stood at the front door and laughed and laughed. Then her form began to change shape as Bucky climbed down from Measle's shoulders and took off the wrinkled mask. Daisy was still giggling as she let her ghost sheet drop to the floor, and Clara giggled even more as she stepped out of her skeleton costume. Declaring total victory, Flatnose tooted his whistle 3 times. The next day at school, Jammer the rabbit was very quiet. What's the matter? Bucky asked him with a click. Oh, nothing, Jammer replied. I guess I just had too much trick-or-treat. Nonsense, said Flatnose. There's no such thing as too much trick-or-treat. Then Bucky stepped up to Jammer. Do you know what I like better than chocolate? He said. Rabbit stew! And everyone howled with laughter except Jammer the rabbit. He didn't think it was funny at all. The end. Well, some of you may be participating in trick-or-treating tomorrow. Some of you may have done it yesterday. But I hope that you are kind to one another and don't take any candy that doesn't belong to you. Also, don't scare people unnecessarily. Now, I asked you how much older I was than this book because I was born in 1966 and this book was written in 1969. If your answer was I'm 3 years older than this book, you were right. Tell your teacher so your teacher can tell me. Have a happy Friday, everybody. And remember, I'm part of the Boo Crew today.